welcome to a bite-sized introduction to rivers. What we are going to focus on in this part of the lesson are the key words. Now, the very obvious place to start is the start. Ergo, where does a river start? The starting point of a river we call the source. No, not tomato sauce, we actually call it a source. Now, it could be a spring, a mountain glacier, or just where lots of rain collect. The source is the furthest point from where the river feeds into the sea, which is called the mouth, which we shall look at very shortly. So the source is actually the furthest point inland where a river can start. The next thing we're going to look at is a drainage basin. This is the area where all the rainwater will drain into that one particular river. Of course, it might start off as a stream, which will then go into a smaller river, into a bigger river, but all the water that can get captured into that one river goes into the drainage basin. The next thing you have is a watershed. Now, to try to understand this, imagine you are standing on top of a hill. If you look to your left down into the valley, there is a river, and then if you look to your right, there is a valley. If you are standing on the highest point, everything on one side is going to go into all the small little streams, tributaries, and then into the river, down one side, and then on the other side, all the water is going to go one way. So, in terms of a watershed, everything at the highest point on one side will go one way, and everything on the other side will go down there. Another word that I have mentioned is a tributary. This is a smaller river that tends to join the bigger river, because we tend to label the bigger river and that one tends to dominate. For example, the River Thames is the main river and the River Wey is a tributary. But there are loads of rivers that feed into the River Wey that feed into the River Thames. So a tributary is a smaller river that feeds into a larger river. The next word is my personal favourite because it's nice and long. It is a confluence. A confluence is where two rivers come together. Now, they sort of come together from any sort of side and then they join together to become one bigger river. Quite often you have the Blue Nile and the White Nile. They join together at a confluence to become the River Nile. As we go further down, you have a floodplain. A floodplain is the land which gets flooded when the river overflows. Now, if you live in the UK in winter, quite often you would have read about flooding, and that is where once the water gets over the side, which we call a bank, it will then flood the surrounding areas. Most places have a floodplain, and my kind of video shows you a nice little example of a floodplain. The final part that we're going to look at on this lesson is the mouth. This is the point at which the river joins the sea. So, you can have two rivers come together, which is the confluence, but where the river meets the sea, we call this a mouth. These are the key words for the first part of our geography lesson.